So, how does a kid's fascination with butterflies lead to one of the most important scientific theories of his time? Well, that is the incredible story of Richard Ebright, and we're going to trace his journey from a young collector to a truly groundbreaking scientist.
To really get how big of a deal Richard Ebright's achievement was, just think about this comparison for a second. Imagine the talent, the pressure, the sheer odds of doing that in sports. That's the kind of impact he had in the world of science, and he did it while he was still just a college student.
And yeah, hitting a home run is a pretty perfect way to put it. At an age when, most of us are just trying to figure out our majors, he and his roommate published a brand new theory on how life itself works at a cellular level. But his story doesn't start in some fancy, high-tech lab. Nope, it's way simpler than that. It all started with a boy who just really liked collecting butterflies. So how on earth did that happen? Let's dive in.
Okay, so our story doesn't begin at a big university. Instead, we're heading to the quiet town of Reading, Pennsylvania, where one young boy's curiosity was about to set him on a world-changing path.
As an only child, Richard, or Richie as everyone called him, didn't really have a team to play baseball or football with. He said it himself. There wasn't much I could do there, but there was one thing I could do: collect things. And that simple pivot from what he couldn't do to what he could do, well, that changed absolutely everything.
And collect he did. This was not just some passing phase. He was incredibly determined, and his curiosity was all over the place. It started with butterflies back in kindergarten, but his collection quickly grew to include rocks, fossils, and coins. He even got really into astronomy, spending entire nights just staring up at the stars. You can see this wasn't just a hobby. It was this deep, driving need to understand the world around him.
Now, behind all that curiosity was probably the single most important influence in his early life: his mother. His father passed away when he was in 3rd grade, so she became his closest companion and his biggest cheerleader. She saw he had this incredibly bright mind, and she actively nurtured it, turning their evenings into these amazing learning adventures.
And the results of that encouragement? They were pretty clear. Get this, by the time he was in the 2nd grade, he had already collected all 25 species of butterflies found right there in his hometown. That's a level of focus that's just incredible at any age.
He even said that this probably would have been the end of his butterfly collecting. He'd found them all. But then a single book showed up, and it would completely transform his hobby into a real, lifelong passion for science.
The book was called The Travels of Monarch X, and it wasn't just a story. It was an invitation. It told the incredible story of monarch butterflies migrating, and this is the crucial part. It asked its young readers to actually become part of the research by helping scientists track their journey.
This invitation led to immediate action. The steps were simple. First, he read the book. Then, his mom helped him get in touch with the scientist himself, a Dr. Urquhart. Before he knew it, young Richie was down in his basement, carefully attaching these tiny little adhesive tags to the wings of monarch butterflies. His collection was no longer just a collection. It was a real scientific contribution.
So participating in research was a huge step, right? But the next major lesson came from a classic place for any young scientist: the school science fair. And his first one was, it was a total failure.
In 7th grade, he entered the fair, probably feeling pretty confident. He had these neatly prepared slides of frog tissues set up under a microscope. But he just sat there, he said, with this sad feeling as he watched basically everyone else win something while he got nothing. He just didn't get it.
But the lesson he learned from that loss was profound. His 7th grade project was a really neat display, sure, but it wasn't an experiment. He was just showing something. He realized the winners had all tried to answer a question. So for 8th grade, he came back with a real experiment, trying to find the cause of a viral disease that was killing monarch caterpillars. And even though he didn't get a conclusive result, he showed his process. And that was the difference between losing and winning.
So now he's armed with this new understanding of what real science actually is. From here, he was on an absolutely unstoppable trajectory. His projects got more and more ambitious, and it all started with one simple but really elegant question.
This was it. This was the question that would basically define his entire high school research career. Everyone else just assumed the spots were, just for decoration. But Richard, he suspected they had to have a purpose. And boy, was he right. Finding that purpose would lead directly to his biggest discoveries. And along the way, he just kept winning at science fairs.
He did this other really cool project where he tested the theory that viceroy butterflies copy the look of monarchs to protect themselves from birds. It was projects like these that really sharpened his skills and built up his reputation as a serious young scientist.
I mean, just look at this timeline. It shows his incredible progression. As a sophomore in high school, he proves those gold spots produce a hormone. As a senior, he shows how that hormone is critical for the butterfly to develop. He gets to Harvard, and as a freshman, he identifies the hormone's actual chemical structure. And then, as a junior, while looking at X-ray photos of that structure, boom, it all clicks. He gets the idea for his groundbreaking theory on how cells read their DNA.
So what is DNA, really? Just think of it like the blueprint for life itself. It's the code that tells every single cell what to become and what to do. Ebright's theory was this massive leap forward in understanding how a cell actually reads that blueprint. And to think, it all started with a question about some little gold spots on a butterfly.
So, what can we take away from this amazing journey? What are the essential ingredients that really come together to create a scientist like Richard Ebright?
Well, when you boil it all down, it seems to come down to three key things. First, you need a first-rate mind, obviously. Second, a relentless, driving curiosity, which we saw from his earliest days. And third, and this might be the most important one, the will to win, but for the right reasons.
And this quote from his social studies teacher, who was another one of his important mentors, just perfectly explains that third ingredient. He wasn't motivated by prizes or getting famous. Sure, he was competitive, but it was a competition with himself, to do the absolute best work he possibly could, to truly understand the problem. The winning, that was just a nice side effect of his dedication.
In the end, Richard Ebright's journey started with a simple, pure curiosity. It wasn't some grand, planned-out career path. It was just a passion that he followed with incredible focus and determination. So think about it. What sparks your curiosity? What's the question you just can't stop asking yourself? Because as this story shows, following that just might be the key to unlocking your own potential.